Hey everybody, welcome to Happy Hour, and today we're going to review the Macallan. Hey guys, welcome to Happy Hour. Today I've got another review for you, a Scotch whiskey. We're going to review the Macallan. I say the Macallan because it adds that extra little of fanciness I think they would appreciate. And I'm not scoffing on Macallan. Macallan can be a little bit of a polarizing brand, and I get that. But today we're going to do the standard 12-year-old, so the sherry oak cask 12-year-old. They do have another one in this range, a 12-year-old. I think it's a double cask. This is a little bit more money, but I think it's kind of their standard mainstay. So yeah, Macallan. Like I said earlier, a little bit of a polarizing brand. I get it; it's fine. This is the first bottle of Macallan actually I've ever purchased. I think Macallan may get a bit of a bad rap. I don't even know if it's a bad rap. Maybe it's unfair. It's a very, very famous brand. There certainly seems to be a bit of a premium that you're going to pay for Macallan compared to other comparable whiskeys in that, at least in that age or in that finish or in that style. But I think that's okay. It's it's a brand that's very, very well known and very famous, and they've done a great job in their marketing. So they've that's allowed them to charge a little bit more than other companies. We do that in everyday life with all types of brands, whether it's clothes or cars or what have you. It's really at the end of the day up to us whether we feel like we want to spend that money on that brand. So that being said, I'm going to leave it aside and we're going to judge it basically on the whiskey itself. So I think another thing with Macallan is it's because it's so famous, at least for me, and I feel like it might be for other people too. I've heard these similar stories. When you start getting into the kind of Scotch whiskey, and you start out with the basics again, you Johnny Walkers, and maybe you upgrade a little bit to a Glenlivet 12, Glenfiddich 12, what have you. I think at that point, Macallan is also a very well-known brand for you, but maybe it's a little bit above your norm or your price range, or it's maybe the peak of the mountain, at least when you're starting out. The name, the brand, especially when you go to a bar and they don't have a lot of whiskeys. It's not a whiskey bar so much. They've got, a dozen or so or 8 or 10 different whiskeys. Usually the Macallan 12-year-old, or maybe even the 15 or 18. Macallan 12-year-old at a bar is going to be running you 20, 25 bucks. So it's kind of like, ooh, that must be good. Or you think that, right? So I think, once you've tried it and maybe gotten a little bit farther in your journey at whiskey, you realize that for the price that you're paying for Macallan, there's a whole bunch of other single malts out there, or whiskeys in general that are purchasable at a less dear price. So enough yik yak. Let's pour it up and see what we got. You can see I've already had a dram or two out of this. I just bought this in the last week or so. I'm trying to have a couple now before I do a review to at least kind of acclimatize myself to it or refamiliarize myself at least a little bit. So like I said, I've never purchased a bottle of Macallan before. I've had it a couple times at the bar years ago. This is the Macallan 12-year-old, like I said, sherry oak cask. It's 43% alcohol. So, okay, not great, but not terrible. And it is matured exclusively in hand-picked sherry seasoned oak casks from Jerez, Spain for richness and complexity. It says natural color. It's probably chill filtered, but so be it. So, on the nose. So yeah, it's very sherried, which says on the bottle, so I would hope it would be. Yeah, it's kind of how I remember it. It's really nice. The other thing I think is the fact that it is so popular. It can't just be on its branding alone, right? It's got to be a pretty decent whiskey, or else there's going to be a lot of single bottles purchased and then never a repeat buy again. So I remember it being very nice whiskey. The unique thing, so it's very sherry to get that maltiness. I can get a little bit of oak in there, but it's mostly sherried and sweetness, the standard sherry notes you'd get. But I do remember this with the Macallan 12-year-old, was that there is something kind of unique in the higher fruitier notes. Like, again, I don't want to beat Glenfarclas to death. I bring it up a lot, but the 10-year-old specifically has a very unique, I haven't found it in too many other whiskeys, where there is this kind of apple cider note that I get from it. And I can't quite place my finger on what it is in the Macallan. Yeah, it's almost maybe like stewed fruits, like a little bit of raisin, but like a citrusy with a citrusy note. So there's something unique in here, I think, which is again, it's quite nice on the nose. It's mostly a nice. It smells like a nice single malt sherried whiskey. And hey, if you like sherried whiskeys, it's not a bad thing. Let's give it a taste. It's very nice. Again, sherry, sherry, sherry. I don't know if I would quite equate this to a sherry bomb. It probably is a sherry bomb. The only reason I say my first instinct was not sherry bomb was the few that I've been tasting lately, like Abelur Abana, the Glendronach 12. I have the Glenfarclas 105. Now, those to me, at least until now, are like sherry up the wazoo, and even the Naked Grouse, to be honest with you. This is heavily sherried, but I think it's actually maybe a little more well balanced. I'm getting a little bit of the wood spice later on in the palate, but it is kind of it's a fairly quick finish, maybe medium lingering finish. But it's quite delicious. It's a little thin on the end, but it is nice. I think it's quite approachable. That's probably again another reason why it's so popular is there's nothing super difficult about it. I think the sweetness, that little bit of maltiness, the sweetness, the sherry, that little bit of again, I can't quite put my finger on the higher notes of maybe a little bit of citrus or stewed fruits, or there's another layer there that makes it quite enjoyable and I think approachable. I think if you're not a whiskey person and somebody poured you a glass of this, most likely I think you'd be pretty happy. So price. This is where it becomes maybe a bit of a stickler for most. This particular bottle near me, again in Chicago, was $80. So this was $79.99. The double cask 12-year-old, I think, is $10 cheaper. So that's $70. Yeah, this is $80. So $80 for a 12-year-old, 43% sherried single malt. That's pushing it a little bit in my book. Now, I'm not adverse to paying $80 for a bottle of scotch. I'll pay considerably more than that if it's really that good. I think there's a lot of other whiskeys out there, at least that I'm starting to come across, and even a handful that I have already, that are at least as good. I'll just leave it at that. They're at least as good for less money, in that kind of $50 to $60 range. So, $50 to $60 compared to $80, yeah, it's not the end of the world, but it's 20 or 30 bucks. So is the brand worth 20 or 30 bucks? I'll leave that up to you. I don't want to bash Macallan. I'm glad I bought this bottle. I really wanted to have a bottle and retry it again. I think it's probably also maybe the most gifted whiskey out there. It's got to be up there, just because, again, if you don't know much about whiskey and maybe you want to buy a nice bottle of scotch for your boss or your granddad or something, and you want to get past that kind of the $30 or $40 range, I think the brand, when you see Macallan 12-year-old on the shelf, you're like, yep, that's a pretty easy no-brainer. And I think it's good for that. Like I said, I think for $20 or $30, there's a lot of other whiskeys that are at least comparable and arguably better. Again, it's all subjective on taste. So that being said, I would give the Macallan 12 sherry cask, I think I would give it 7.5 stars. 7.5 stars. I would rate it 7.5 out of 10. I think it's an 8 quality on the palate, but I think I'm going to knock a half a point off just because it is a little bit expensive for what it is. But hey, 7.5 out of 10, that's great. Again, I'm going to enjoy this. I will enjoy drinking every drop of it. You know what? I actually do want to try something because this is quite heavily sherried. I would like to taste it back to back against the Glendronach 12. So I'll be back. All right, so I've got the Glendronach 12 here. I like doing these back-to-back comparisons because I think, most of the whiskeys I drink, I generally enjoy on their own. It's hard to really discern. I haven't had a really bad whiskey, I guess, yet. But when I do taste them back-to-back, side by side, or whiskeys that are similar, it makes a world of difference in discerning the differences. All right, so Macallan, let me just sniff this one. Got the nose on this one. Yep, malty sherry. And that little bit of weird fruit top. Glendronach. Yeah. Yeah, so this, wow, the Glendronach, I've brought this up a couple of times to compare to other ones because right now this is my favorite sherried whiskey, heavily sherried whiskey, sherry bomb. And it is glorious on the nose. It's just like a fruit salad. Like there's an underlying dark malt, but there's just like strawberries and berries and citrus. It's just all over the map. It's beautiful. Is this 43? Yeah, so they're both 43%. All right. I'm going to taste the Macallan again, and we'll taste the Glendronach. Very nice. Yeah. I prefer this considerably. Not considerably. I prefer this. There's a little bit of sharpness on the palate right away with the Macallan. It's not much. This is like drinking like the liquid from fruit salad. You ever had like a can of fruit salad, that crappy stuff? That sugar water that's in there? Yeah, it's fantastic. So it's just rounded. So, okay, well, I'm glad I did that. This is interesting. I'm gonna take a little more time and do the comparison, but I won't kill you with having to watch it. But out of the gate, so $80. This is $65 here for me. They're both 43%. They're both heavily sherried. I'm gonna take Glendronach pretty much every day of the week for 15 bucks cheaper. If they were the same price, I'd still take the Glendronach. But again, the fact that it's 15 bucks cheaper, to me, this is a no-brainer. And again, that's not bashing the Macallan. This is a great whiskey, but I think this is kind of goes to what I was saying earlier. There's a lot of other whiskeys. There's just so many to choose from out there that in this price point and even a little bit less, there's a lot of interesting stuff out there to try. So on that note, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please click thumbs up. And if you'd like to subscribe, I'd appreciate that as well. Stick around. We got some more fun videos coming. And yeah, thanks for watching. See ya.